Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you here for the third session of Leland's Fall College Application Bootcamp. We'll wait a couple minutes to let folks roll in, but while we're all settling in, please take the time to scan the QR code on your screen. It'll take you directly to Leland's website, where you can explore all the amazing coaches and programs we have to help you on your journey to getting into your dream school. Okay, a couple more announcements. Throughout the course of the bootcamp, we'll be offering a scholarship where some lucky attendees will win a 5,000 scholarship towards college admissions coaching with any expert consultant on Leland's website, including the instructor of our bootcamp today, Skylar. Attending all our sessions live and doing the session assignments gives you points towards winning, so make sure to attend all the sessions and stick around till the end. Also, don't forget to join our Bootcamp Facebook group where both parents and students can connect, ask questions, and share experiences. Our team and instructors will be active there, including Nick and I, offering advice throughout the bootcamp. Today, we're excited to have Skylar leading our session on the personal essay. Now, Skylar is an outstanding coach with extensive experience guiding students through the complete college application process. You can learn more about him by checking out his profile, which I'll link in the chat. And we're ready to kick things off. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Skylar. Take it away.
It looks like we've got a great question in the chat here, which is where do we send the homeworks or what do we do with them when we finish? And just as Skylar's getting set up, I'd love to address that. And by the way, I'm Nick from the Leland team. Some of you may have seen me around as well. I know Tunde is the star of the show here, but I'm glad to be here as well. The homework assignments are actually going to help you form the foundation or basis of your application. And so those homework assignments are things that if you choose to work with an admissions coach like our expert tonight, Skylar, you'll be able to leverage those as you get started drafting your narrative. So for example, you've chosen your recommenders based on our recommender session one. You'll be able to then take that and present to your coach and say, hey, these are the recommenders that I've selected based on the bootcamp. What are your thoughts? Get that kind of second opinion, and then send out your recommender prep packets. Same with the essays and narratives and things that we'll be talking about tonight. So with all of that, I'm excited to hand it back over to Skylar.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thank you, guys. I'm excited to be with you. Excited to chat with y'all. And let's go ahead and let's jump in here. So this is a quick overview of what we're going to cover this evening. So we'll have an introduction. And hold on, I want to just, did I skip a slide here? And I'm having all kinds of tech issues right now. No, we're good. We're good. Okay. So we're going to start with the introduction. I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of an overview of the personal statement. So tonight, I know you've been in some different sessions focusing on different components of the writing process. We're going to really be focused on the personal statement. So think about that 650-word Common App essay that's going to be submitted to all your schools. We're going to talk about really refining that and being intentional about our process behind preparing that personal statement. I want to talk a little bit about the homework that I assigned to y'all. I was really excited to pass that along to you. This is something I just, these exercises in particular were just presented at the most recent NACAC conference, which is the National Association for College Admissions Counseling. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I hope that was a helpful process for you all. We're going to break down the different essay structures that are the most common in a personal statement. Talk a little bit about how you can weave this into your broader story. We're going to take a look at some examples, talk about how you can get some high-level editing after this workshop, and then we'll do a Q&A and hopefully answer all of your questions. So let's go ahead and let's get started here. A little bit more about me. I think Tunde might have given you a little bit of info on me when I was not able to hear anything, but I'll give you a quick rundown. I spent over 10 years in university admissions, primarily in highly selective admissions spaces. So I'm based in the Chicagoland area. This is where a lot of my professional experience has been. My most recent admissions experience was at the University of Chicago. I worked for the business school there, Booth, as an associate director of admissions. And prior to that, I spent a number of years in undergraduate admissions at Northwestern University, where I was assistant director of admissions. And I also got a master's degree from Northwestern in higher education administration with an emphasis on university admissions. So I am a complete nerd for this. This is what I geek out on all the time. When I was 16 for Halloween, I dressed up for the first time as an admissions counselor, and ever since then, this has been my dream. That's a joke, Tunde. That's not a real thing. I did not do that. No one dreams of doing this work, but I found myself in it, and I'm a real nerd for it, and I really love this process. If you take a look at my Leland profile, you can see what folks are saying about me. I got a quote here. I won't read the whole thing. That's from Kennedy I worked with last year, who's currently at MIT, who's rocking and rolling. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the personal statement. Why is this so important? I always say this is kind of like your beachfront property on your application, right? This is a high value piece of real estate. So when we think about the personal statement, like I said, this is a 650 word maximum essay that you're going to send to every school that you're applying that's a part of the common application. Most schools you are applying to will be common application schools. Obviously, if you're applying to the UC system, there are a few other anecdotal cases where maybe there's separate applications, but most of your big players are going to be on the common application. So this is a pretty important writing supplement. And even if you're applying to some of these other applications, likely you can repurpose some of the content from your personal statement for their version of that writing supplement. Why I love this is because you can share anything with the admissions committee here. It's really the only spot in your application where they really take off the guardrails. And you're like, well, they've got the prompts. And yeah, they do. You've got these various prompts you can choose from, but you can also literally create your own prompt. That's one of the choices. So you can say whatever you want here. So that's why I think this is so valuable, because you've got full control over the narrative you're telling in your writing supplement. So when you think about this, think about what else do you want this admissions committee to know about you? This is a great chance to highlight that. Why I also think this is important is because this is one of the few spaces in your application where we as admissions officers get to hear your voice, right? Throughout so many other parts of the application, we're hearing other people talk about you and recommendations. We're seeing how you did in a math class 3 years ago. We're seeing the activities you did, but this is a chance for us to hear directly from you, which gives you an inherent opportunity to also show things about you: personality, humor, emotional intelligence. So that's another reason why I think this is a really important piece. Another thing to think about here is that admissions officers are also looking for college level writing. So I think sometimes we get so hung up on having the perfect topic and the perfect thing we write about that we forget that another huge part of this is they're assessing, hey, can this person write at a college level? So that's another reason why this is a really important piece. So I want to talk a little bit about the assignment that I gave you. Also, I adapted this from Ethan Sawyer, who's the college essay guy. He presented this at the most recent NatCat conference this year. And he really talked about how focusing on the identities that you hold and the values that are important to you and using those to really guide your essay topic and selection, right? I think, we talked about having the perfect topic or the perfect thing to write about it. And the truth is, what you write about is far less important than what we learn about you through what you write about, right? I have a former colleague who I worked with at Northwestern when she worked at Stanford prior to working at Northwestern. She had a college essay that she always talked about, which was an essay that was written literally about chicken nuggets. So their cafeteria had gotten rid of the chicken nuggets, and this student and many students were very upset about this. So the student did community organizing within his school to petition to bring back the student nuggets. And he was able to show this broader interest in, social justice, policy, all this stuff through the vehicle of chicken nuggets. And I think if you do that second part first, kind of figuring out what are the values and identities and things that I want to show to an admissions officer, and once you identify that, then you can figure out what's the vehicle I want to use to show them that. So I really like kind of approaching it from this way, and I hope you found it helpful. So I've got some questions. I would love if y'all are interested in unmuting and maybe sharing out. But I also know we don't all know each other. That may be a little uncomfortable. So you can also use the chat as well too. But I'd like to have some discussion around how this exercise felt. So let's take a look at this first question. How do the values you chose influence your identity? So was there anyone, and you can use the chat or you can unmute, where in doing that exercise, you really saw how certain values also impact an identity that you hold? Maybe an example would be you really value I don't know, I can't remember all the values off the top of my head, but maybe you had like a value of compassion, right? And so the way that impacts your identity is that you're in a first-gen American home and you help at your grandparents' restaurant or your parents' restaurant here in the US. And that's a way to connect with your cultural identity, but also to give back in a compassionate way to your ancestors and to the people that you care about, right? In the chat, or verbally, did any of you see a connection between one of your values and an identity that you hold? Okay, I'm seeing some stuff come in. Let's take a look here. So, okay, lots of good stuff coming in the chat. So I chose community as a value that has majorly shaped my identity and decisions because I want to ensure that everyone I am associated with feels accepted and has a voice. Ooh, I love that. I love that. I'm working with a candidate right now who's talking a lot about her own personal neurodivergent story, right? So she's a student who has dyslexia, ADHD, and she's talking about, I think also how like this community aspect is really important to her and advocating for others who hold that identity for that same reason to make sure that these, underrepresented voices have a platform. I love that, Megan. um, okay, let's see. I valued inclusion and it showed through my identity as a minority student in an all-white high school after moving from a diverse county. Yes, I love that. I love that. And here's the thing: for those of us who hold marginalized identities, we're on this call. That's not going to show up as readily as it would have historically, right? So some of y'all may have kept up with some of the stuff that was happening in the admissions world around a topic called affirmative action. And the Supreme Court just recently ruled on something called affirmative action, which has been around in the US for years and years and years, and basically allowed universities to take race and ethnicity into account when making admissions decisions. And now universities aren't able to do that. But this can still be a really important part of your identity and an important thing for admissions officers to know. So finding ways to incorporate that and to talk about how you've impacted those communities of folks who also share your identity, that's a great way to work that into your application intentionally when that may otherwise not be there. So I love that. I love that. I like this. Achievement and adventure. I found out that I have achieved getting first place in my tennis matches as a #1 JV singles tennis player. I love trying new things, and I really do not mind standing out with my own energy. I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, this is great. This is great. Okay, so let's try to take this a little bit further, y'all. So when you think about the identities that were outlined in that document and kind of selecting the identities that felt true to you, did anyone start thinking already about how one of these identities might show up in your personal statement or how you might lean into that in your personal statement? Think about those identities. Did you think about any ways where you might share that identity in your personal statement? Ooh, interesting question, Steve. I wonder if some of these identities would be more valued than others in the eyes of college. Okay, we can talk about that. Laya, I think I'm pronouncing your name right. I love that you do boxing. Very cool. Okay, let's see this one. In my personal statement, my identity as a hard worker would stand out by highlighting my background. Growing up in a family that had to work day by day to survive taught me the value of perseverance. I share how entrepreneurship not only lifted my family, but also became my passion, driving me to create opportunities and initiatives for others to thrive. This journey shapes who I am today and fuels my desire to keep making a difference. I love that. Awesome, Kelly. That sounds great. That sounds great. Okay, cool. So let's think about this last question. Which identity, and this goes to Steve's question, which identity do you think is most crucial for admissions officers to understand about you? Um, and before I answer your question, Steve, and before I lean into this a little bit, I'd be curious if you all think there are certain identities that admissions officers care about more than others. What do you think happens behind the curtain? What do you think we care about? Community service, leadership identity, maybe? Okay, okay. How do I choose what best influences me? I want them to understand my value for growth through balance in my essay. Yep. My balance between personal development through working on new coding projects. Okay, yeah, that's all great. Authenticity, every everything, first year GPA. Yeah, so some of this, right, from a holistic review standpoint, there's a lot of things they're considering, right? So, I love that, first GPA, then a lot of things. Um, we won't go too deep into other aspects of this process because we're focused on the personal statement tonight. But you're right, right? Like I always say, that first hurdle you got to clear is that academic hurdle. You got to show them you can be competitive in the classroom. And then there's all these other factors. They're looking at extracurriculars, they're looking at your writing, they're looking at your demonstrated interests, all this good stuff. And I think you're going to have a lot of opportunities to show these different values and identities, both through your personal statement, through your supplementals, through your activities that you've participated in. So you're right, this is going to show up in other places too. And I think that, as far as your question earlier, Steve, what identity is most important to admissions officers, I don't think there is a one size fits all. And I think one of the big mistakes in this process is thinking that there is something that we want to hear, right? Or something we want to see. Ultimately, we want to learn more about who you are through this personal statement. We want to understand things about you that either reinforce the story that we're telling or show us something unique and different about you that maybe we're not getting in other parts of your application. So, whether that value is that you are adventurous or hardworking or that you're a team player or that you're compassionate, whatever that is, whether that identity is that you are, a first generation Southeast Asian female interested in business, or maybe you're someone who is an athlete and that's part of your identity, or whatever it is. What's important is it important to you? What is it telling us as an admissions reader about who you are now, who you're going to be at our university, and who you're going to be when you leave? So, okay, let's keep moving. We spent some good time on this. We're going to come back to some of this stuff in a little bit. But hopefully that will be helpful as you keep thinking about what are the values and identities that I want to make sure I am showcasing to my admissions officer. So let's talk a little bit about personal statement structures, kind of the most common essay structures that we'll see in a personal statement in your application. One is narrative, which is a story-based approach. Oh, I have a typo on there. That's going to drive me nuts. So sorry. Story-based approach, focusing on one personal growth or transformative experience. So this is where you kind of want to lean into one significant experience or story that really you use as a vehicle to share, what did you learn from this experience? What are those values that you develop from these experiences or from this experience? And also, why does it matter to you moving forward? So we'll kind of talk about the perfect outline for that, but you're really focused on one story with a narrative structure. A montage is more a theme, right? So you've kind of got this theme that serves as an umbrella over your entire essay. And then you've got similar stories or a handful of experiences that you're weaving together to hit home a central point. So let's give some examples of these, and let's lean in a little bit more on the narrative structure here first. So when you think about a narrative essay outline in this context, you want to think about the story. So what is the vehicle that we're using? You'll hear me say that a lot. What is the story that we're telling to show then impact? And then what is that so what? So here's the story. Here is the impact on me of this experience. Here is why it matters to you as an admissions officer, and it matters to me moving forward into college and beyond. So here's an example of an outline for this type of structure. So first we have the story. After seeing his grandmother struggle with early dementia, a student started volunteering at a senior center, leading brain games and cognitive activities. He introduced tablet-based memory games to engage the seniors and boost participation. So here's the story. He sees grandma struggling with this ailment. He starts volunteering at a senior center and leading cognitive games to enhance seniors' ability to participate and remember things. The impact, the experience deepened his understanding of cognitive decline, leading him to develop an app with memory games for seniors. He also trained other volunteers, ensuring his project would continue benefiting the community. So what? Now he plans to study cognitive science in college to research innovative solutions for people with neurodegenerative conditions using technology to improve their quality of life. So we've got this story. We kind of can see some of the values that are represented in there. His passion for family, his passion for service and giving back. We're also seeing, and we'll talk more about like narrative stuff, but we're seeing some of that STEM emphasis come into here too, which is really nice. He talks specifically about the impact that this had and how he then took what he learned from this experience and applied it further. And then the so what now is he wants to study cognitive science. He wants to research innovative solutions for people. He wants to take this further to enhance their quality of life. So you can see, hey, this is a great story, great vehicle. He talked about what he did with those values and those lessons and the impact it had on him and the impact he was able to have on his community as a result. And then it's a clear so what on why this matters to me as an admissions reader. I learned a lot about this student in this essay. So here's an example, and I would love to hear from y'all if you think this is a good narrative essay based on what we're hearing, or if you think this could be improved. So it's pretty short. I'll give it a read here. I volunteer at an animal shelter every weekend. It's a lot of work, but I like spending time with the animals. At the shelter, I do things like clean the cages, feed the animals, and sometimes I walk the dogs. It can be tiring, but it's also fun. I've met a lot of nice animals. There's one dog, Max, who was shy at first, but eventually warmed up to me. I felt proud that I was able to help him. Overall, volunteering at the animal shelter has been a good experience, and I think it will help me in the future. All right, my friends, what do you think? Good narrative essay, not a good narrative essay? No good, not really good. Could be improved. No, not really. Okay. So in the chat box, tell me, what do you feel like is missing here? And let's think back to the story component, the impact, and the so what. What's missing here? So I see a little bit coming in. Doesn't share any growth or change. Yeah. We're not seeing the impact on the student or the impact they really had on the shelter. Yeah, no growth. Yeah. Agreeing with all this. The results. Yeah, certain words are really repetitive. Yeah, not a lot of depth here, right? Like, kind of broad statements, doing a lot of telling, not a lot of showing. So, okay, let's take a look at another one. This is the same essay, but a little bit different. So let's take a look here. The my screen sharing little thing here is covering part of the essay, so I'm going to miss some of the words here. But it says, every Saturday morning, I wake up at 6 a.m., grab my water bottle and sneakers, and head to the, I think it says animal shelter, something, way to earn my required community service hours. But soon I found myself counting down the days until I could return. Little did I know the shelter would teach me more than how to care for abandoned animals. It taught me responsibility, patience, and empathy, traits that have shaped who I am today. When I first started, I was hesitant to get too close to the animals, unsure of how they would react to a stranger. But as I spent more time at the shelter, I grew confident in my abilities and began taking on more responsibilities. From cleaning kennels to walking the dogs, I learned the importance of routine and care. However, the most impactful moment came when I met Max, a scared and injured puppy who had been abandoned. Max had a broken leg and was terrified of human contact. For weeks, I worked with him, slowly gaining his trust by sitting near his cage, speaking to him softly, and offering treats. Over time, Max started to come closer, eventually allowing me to gently pet him. The moment he let me pick him up, I knew we had crossed a significant significant milestone in his rehabilitation. Max's journey taught me the value of patience and persistence. Watching him transform from a timid animal into a playful dog not only fueled me with pride, but also deepened my understanding of the emotional support these animals need alongside physical care. Inspired by my experience with Max, I took on a leadership role at the shelter, organizing training sessions for new volunteers on how to care for injured animals. I wanted to do more, so I founded a nonprofit dedicated to rehabilitating injured stray animals in my local community. Our organization raises funds for veterinary care and partners with local shelters to provide rehabilitation for animals like Max. Through this work, I've been able to give back to my community while developing skills in leadership, organization, and advocacy. Through my time at the shelter and my work with the nonprofit, I have discovered my passion for helping those who cannot help themselves. It is why I plan to study veterinary science in college. The lessons I have learned from caring for Max and other animals extend beyond the shelter and into how I interact with the world. I now know that compassion, responsibility, and leadership are central to who I am, and I'm excited to continue growing these qualities in college and beyond. Okay, y'all. What do we think? I think it's pretty obvious. This one's a little bit better. But talk to me, y'all. Why do you think this one was better than the first sample? So I see some stuff coming in. A lot of detail. So much more detail. Yeah. A lot of passion, and the storytelling aspect is very inspiring. It also shows the impact that this experience had on her and connects her volunteering to her main values and her goal, pursuing higher education. Exactly. I mean, she did a great job of showing the impact it had on her, what she learned from the experience, what she took with those learnings already, and how she's applied that already in her high school experience. And then also, why does this matter to her as a future college student, right? I think she rocked that. Exactly. Shows how the student developed a passion for something, took on leadership after learning from the experience. Also creates a sense of intimacy using specific examples such as working with Max. Yes, I love that. I love that. One thing I'll say a lot, especially if you work with me, I'll say show, don't tell, right? It's way more impactful for you to personalize this, just like you said, give a name. Like instead of saying, I help dogs at the shelter, talk about that one dog, right? Lean in on that, because I'm going to remember Max way more than I'm going to hear kind of general statements about the work that she had. So I think that's a great point. See other comments, a lot of detail. Emotional, yeah. I mean, you really could feel some of it, right? Like they did a great job of bringing the reader in. More vivid. Yeah, awesome. Anecdotes. Yeah, great. So so you're all seeing this. This one did a really, really, really nice job. So when we look at how they outline this, so this is that essay that we just read. Let's go back and take a look at how that outline kind of fits into that outline that we're talking about for the narrative essay. So the story: student volunteers at a local animal shelter for required community service. Grows to love the experience as she helps rehabilitate an injured puppy named Max. The impact: the student discovered a passion for helping those who cannot help themselves. Now looks to expand her impact through a leadership role at the shelter and a nonprofit she founded to help injured animals. The so what? Why does this matter to me as a reader? Why does it matter to you right now? She now plans to study veterinary science in college and hopes to carry these values on through college and her future veterinary practice. Chef's kiss. This was great. Okay, before we jump into montage essays, I want to pause here for a second and see if there are any questions about the narrative structure or anything we've talked about to this point before we move on to another essay structure. Ooh, good question. Are the examples good indicators for the level of writing college admissions officers look for? That's a great question. I would say that the better example that we just looked at, yeah, I mean, that was pretty well written. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you want to showcase that you can write at an above high school level writing, right? Like, I mean, you want to show them that's a strong part of your piece. So no grammatical errors, avoid contractions. This is something I'm like, I don't know, I think it's the former English major in me. I don't like seeing contractions in writing that's being submitted. So instead of saying like, don't, say do not, things like that. So yeah, I think these examples are good reference points, particularly the better examples for kind of the quality that they're looking for. How How can you make a narrative essay more emotional and connecting? I feel like the essay I'm writing seems a little disconnected, like it's a third person. Ooh, that's a great question, Chloe. You know, one piece is what we saw with the two samples we just gave, right? I don't know what your topic is, but any opportunity you have to like humanize it or to personalize it a little bit more, I think goes a long way in connecting the reader a little bit more closely. Um, I think another piece too is I don't know what you're doing for your opening paragraph, but sometimes having a nice strong hook in the beginning can also be a good way to draw a reader in. Um, I have a student that I'm working with right now who's writing her personal statement about working at a sushi restaurant and being a sushi chef. And, she had this nice opening paragraph, but I also felt like we weren't totally getting the like nitty gritty emotion and I wanted to see that like behind the counter experience of rolling the sushi. So we started with an anecdote, and part of the essay is connecting her experience at a sushi restaurant. She's mixed race, so she's part Japanese, part white, grows up in a predominantly white community. She's very white passing and felt this disconnect from her cultural identity. And I didn't know if we were totally showing that well. And so we started the hook with her being on the sushi line and one of her fellow chefs saying, I thought you would be better at this because you're Japanese. And that kind of microaggression to bring them in right away and kind of like show that feeling of like not really belonging in either world. So I think having a nice hook or a story can be a good way to do that too. But yeah, try to personalize it, try to make it a little bit more intimate if you can. I feel like when I write my personal statement, it's not creative enough or niche enough. Is there any way to kind of spice up the essay to where it stands out more? Yeah, I think this is another area where the topic doesn't matter, the vehicle doesn't matter as much as what you do with it. And so, going back to some of the values and identities that we talked about in the beginning here, and to see like, am I really showing this? Am I displaying what I want to display to the admissions officer through the story that I'm telling? I think having a cool hook in the beginning can be a good way to kind of spice it up a little bit. Throw in some personality. Don't be afraid to use humor in your essay. These are all good ways to kind of make it feel a little bit more spicy in your writing. Okay, I'm going to answer this one more question, then we'll keep going. You said that the intimacy, it's really helpful. Which other details or aspects do I consider are important? One piece that I think students miss a lot is that so what piece. I've read so many essays, and you get to the end, and I'm like, okay, well, that was a nice story, but I don't really see why it matters to this student, right? And so, don't forget that piece of like, why is this an important story to tell? And don't just assume the reader is going to draw those connections on their own, right? They're working fast through these essays. Many of the essays I read, I'm not going to lie to you, I mean, they were like heavy skims. And so you want to be very clear about what you're trying to tell. And so I think being really intentional with that, so what, that's something I feel like students miss a lot. And also tell your story, don't tell somebody else's story. When, a lot of times where I would read about, like grandma, or I would read about, a friend who experienced a really traumatic thing and like what it was like being their friend. And those are tough to do to not have it feel like you're co-opting someone else's story. And when I end an essay, I don't want to feel like I learned more about grandma than I learned about you, right? So I would say that's another thing that I feel like I see sometimes. All right, we're going to keep going. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. I just want to make sure we can get through all the good stuff, so we'll keep rocking here. Let's talk a little bit about montage essays. So, okay. When we think about how to outline the montage essay, you'll see that last piece still needs to be there, right? That so what? Why does this story matter? But instead of leading with the story here, you want to really lead with the theme here. So what is that kind of overarching topic that you want to make sure you kind of lean into in your essay? So here's an example of one. The theme is a passion for food and cooking and how it connects with culture, creativity, and community. The examples that the students used in this essay to lean into this theme was first cooking traditional family meals with my grandmother, learning the stories behind each recipe, volunteering at a community soup kitchen, using cooking to bring people together and provide comfort, experimenting with fusion recipes in my high school culinary club, combining flavors from different cultures to create something new. And then our favorite, so what? Through these experiences, I've come to realize that food is more than just nourishment. It is a way to connect with others, persevere traditions, or excuse me, preserve traditions, and express creativity. I now plan to study cultural anthropology in college to explore the role of food in shaping societies and fostering connections across diverse communities. I will also say, like a lot of these examples that I've given here for that so what, they lean into like a major. Like the so what is now I'm going to study this thing that directly connects with my experience. Not every essay does that have to be your so what, right? Your so what can be broader than that. It doesn't necessarily have to tie into your academic piece. It can be like one of those identities or values that are really important, and you're going to carry that value forward into your school and into your career beyond that. So don't think it has to tie directly into your major, even though I know a lot of these examples do. But so again, theme, what's that umbrella? What's that overarching topic that we're leaning into? For here, it's passion of cooking. Now it connects to culture and community. We have some nice examples here that support that theme. So more intimate example, cooking with grandma, taking that and volunteering, experimenting with fusion recipes. And then this has led to this cultural anthropology interest. So a nice example here. Let's take a look at an essay. Okay, let's see here. All right. I have always liked music. Ever since I was little, my dad would play the guitar at home and I would listen to him sing. Thought it was fun, so I decided to try playing an instrument myself. I picked the violin in middle school and played in the school orchestra for a few years. I liked the experience because I got to perform with other students and we did concerts for our families. When I got to high school, I joined a community program where I taught kids how to play music. I enjoyed working with them because I like music and it was nice to help kids learn how to play instruments. There was one student named Marco who was shy, but once he started learning the piano, he became more confident. I think music is important because it gives people something fun to do. In the future, I plan to keep studying music. I hope to continue playing violin in college and maybe teach other people too. I think music is a good way to express yourself, and it has been an important part of my life. All right, y'all. Good montage essay, not a good montage essay. What do you think? The so what part? Yeah, okay. Some questions there on why does this story matter? Not college level. Great job, Megan. We talked about that. I think that was Megan who said that this also has to show that you can write at a college level. Not great. Just telling, okay-ish. Maybe a little bit better than that first narrative essay that we looked at. They personalized a little bit more. We got a specific reference to a kiddo. We can see the theme is this passion for music. But yeah, where's that so what? I don't know if I leave this essay feeling like I really learned a lot about the student who's applying beyond the fact that they like music. So all right, you see already this one's longer. This is the better one. Let's take a look at how they improved this essay with some revisions. My passion for music has always been a constant, shaping the way I see the world and interact with those around me. It started with my family, where music was a source of joy and tradition. My earliest memories are of sitting beside my father as he played the guitar, singing songs passed down from his childhood. It was in those moments that I learned music could tell a story, evoke an emotion, and connect people across generations. In middle school, I took up the violin, and what began as an after school activity quickly turned into something more profound. The discipline of practicing scales and mastering techniques taught me patience and persistence, qualities I did not always have. Performing in orchestra, surrounded by others equally passionate about their instruments, helped me understand the value of teamwork and collaboration. We were all individual musicians, but when we came together, we created something far greater than any of us could achieve alone. By high school, I wanted to do more with music than just perform. I started volunteering at a local community center where I taught music lessons to underprivileged children. Watching these students discover music for the first time and seeing how it gave them a new outlet for expression was incredibly fulfilling. One student in particular, a quiet boy named Marco, struggled to find his voice in the classroom, but thrived in his piano lessons. Over time, I saw how music helped him build confidence and develop a sense of identity. My experience with music, from family traditions to orchestra performances to teaching, have shaped me into someone who believes in the power of art to connect and uplift. I've learned that music is more than just sound. It is a universal language that transcends barriers and brings people together. This belief has inspired me to pursue music therapy in college, where I hope to use my passion for music to help individuals overcome challenges and express themselves. Yeah, another example of the major here. Um, but this belief has inspired me to pursue music therapy in college, where I hope to use my passion for music to help individuals overcome challenges and express themselves in ways they never thought possible. I want to continue exploring how music can heal, inspire, and connect people across cultures, just as it has done in my life. And that last line there, that could be the so what, right? And maybe the way they're going to apply that is they're going to continue, investing in other local nonprofits in the area to continue providing additional assistance. Maybe they're going to apply those values to their student organization or what have you. Again, it doesn't have to connect to the academic piece, but clearly a much, much better essay here. Go ahead and use the chat. What were some things you liked about this essay compared to the first draft of it? Very personal in the beginning. Yeah, I really like the beginning of this one better too. One thought I had as I was rereading this again is, maybe this is one where a nice hook in the beginning, maybe we're getting some dialogue from dad in these moments, or maybe a really like specifically referencing the song, right? Even like the song from the childhood and that's been passed down. I think they could have even personalized a little bit more there. Yeah, this is a bigger part of their personality and their values. The emotional impact at the start was deep. Yep. Let's see what else we got. It answers the so what, and it really hits home the passion for music, and like also beyond that, you see a lot of what they've done with this passion too. It's not just I love music. They really talk about how music is a vehicle for using art to connect and uplift people, and they give a lot of different examples of that. We get, I think this is another example too where we could have had a little bit of the cultural influence. Like maybe if you're someone who is Latinx, maybe it's a famous song that is in Spanish that you can reference. You can also show a little bit of your cultural identity here too. I think there were ways to bring in maybe even a little bit more there. In the final paragraph, it wraps everything up. Yeah, by talking about previous experiences, talks about personal growth, perspective on music, values, connection, how it transforms people. Yeah, totally. This is all great. And this, I don't know the word count on this, but I don't think it's right at 650. And I think this one even had opportunities to go a little bit deeper in spots. But let's take a look at the outline here. This is how that essay kind of fit into this montage outline that we're working with here. So you've got the theme, passion for music and its power to connect and uplift and inspire others. The examples we saw represented family memories of learning music from dad, showing how music connects across generations, playing the violin in the school orchestra, learning teamwork, discipline, collaboration, volunteering at a community center, teaching music to underprivileged children, and seeing the transformative effect it had on that student, Marco. And then the so what? Music has shaped and taught them the value of connection and expression. They now plan to study music therapy in college. They want to continue to use the passion to help others overcome challenges and heal through music. So you can see how they kind of worked all of that in there. And I thought, yeah, pretty nice essay, a pretty nice essay. And I would say, to the question of, was it written at a college level? And I would say that essay was written pretty well too. So, okay, let's pause here. What questions do y'all have about montage essays or anything we've talked about with this up to this point? Okay, I'm getting some questions that are a little bit more specific, so we'll try to touch on those in the Q&A. How do we write a hook that will actively engage admissions officers, especially when they read so many essays? Such a good question. This is tough, and honestly, I think this is where working with a coach or having someone who has read a lot of these essays and can tell you kind of the things that are overdone, the things that will truly feel unique. I think this is where that perspective is helpful. One thing, an example that's coming to mind, which is not a personal statement example, but an example from supplemental essays. When you think about those like why X school essay, right? So when I think about at Northwestern, we had at that time a simple why Northwestern ? And whatever that why X school is, one thing that's really, really played out. And if you're doing this, I'm sorry to break this to you here. There's still plenty of time to readjust this. But the day in the life essay, right, where you kind of like are like, this is what a day in the life at Northwestern would be like. You kind of write it from the perspective of a first year student there. That's an example of something we see a lot, right? So I think trying to think of what are the tactics and structures that are maybe a little bit more unique in the mix of a lot of similar stuff, and then avoiding topics that are also done a lot, right? The example I always give is the sports injury essay. A lot of essays about tearing an ACL, and that was the biggest obstacle to overcome. And that might be right, but one of the pieces we want to think about is how is the story we're telling also, something that's also like unique to you, as much as possible. And then yeah, I think you know that first hook is going to be different depending on the topic of the essay. Do you lean into humor? Do you lean into more of like a heartstring tug in that hook? I think there are different ways to approach that. All right, let's keep rocking here. So I saw one more question come in. Let me try to answer this one real quick. When you said that the story doesn't really need to be related with the major, you said that because you can share your that. Let's see. Oops, I got another question. Sorry, scroll down. Man, this is the problem with the chatting. He's moving on me. When you said that the story doesn't really need to be related with the major, you said that because you can share that passion in your extracurriculars and the fact that you chose to apply to it. It's not just how good. Yeah, right, exactly. And so the question is, should the essay kind of share the values you have as a person instead of just how good of a student you are? And yeah, I think another thing, and some of these examples toe this line a little bit. You don't just want your essay to be a reiteration of stuff you've said elsewhere, or like just like a list of accomplishments either, right? As you kind of list those salient things, whether it was the nonprofit starting or what have you, you want that to kind of work naturally within the topic that you're talking about, the story that you're telling. But yeah, we want to, we don't just want to learn more necessarily extracurriculars that you participate in. We want to know why those matter to you. And the essay, if you're going to talk about those extracurriculars, gives you an opportunity to elaborate on some of those values, those kind of intangible pieces that maybe you don't have enough space in that character count for the activities list to talk about. You've got more space here to do that. Okay, let's talk about that application narrative piece, because I think this is important, and this has come up a little bit. And when you think about the overall application narrative, and this is one of those pieces that I work really closely with my students on, is what is that story that we're telling throughout the application, right? What is the overarching theme that is going to be evidenced through not just your narrative, but also in the other components of your application. So think about the major that you select. Think about the activities and the order of the activities list. How you choose to write your supplemental essay. All of this stuff is telling a story about who you are now, who you're going to be on their campus, and who you're going to be when you leave. So the personal statement is a great place to reinforce your overall application narrative. It doesn't have to necessarily, like you don't have to be like, I had a student I worked with last year who part of the story we told was kind of this passion for the intersection of math and gender equity, right? And so she had done all this amazing math stuff. And then, we worked together. She started a chapter of period.org in her community. She was delivering menstrual kits to low income areas within her community. She did research on statistical modeling of reproductive health. So she's doing all this stuff that's telling the story, right? That she's passionate about using math to impact gender equity. For her major, she majored in gender studies with a minor in mathematics, right? So all this stuff is telling the story. But for her, we didn't use her personal statement necessarily to lean into that, right? We used supplemental essays to talk more about some of her nonprofit work and some of the stuff to kind of reinforce that. And for her personal statement, we talked about, her cultural identity a little bit more. So it doesn't have to, but this can be a great place to kind of lean into that story more and to kind of really showcase in narrative form this broader story that we're telling through these other components. And I had the example I just gave. A student interested in gender equity writes about finance. So in this scenario would be if she did use her personal statement to write about her nonprofit. that provided menstrual products to low-income communities. Example 2, a student connecting with their culture by working at a Chinese restaurant in their predominantly white community. So if, kind of this broader theme we're talking about is like cultural competency, leaning into your own identity, they lean into that there. And then you can tie this into your so what. So this is a great place to connect your essay to your overall story. So like in those examples, we did connect to a broader application, major focus, academic focus that's kind of weaved throughout here. So I think when you think about both your application or your essay, so what, but also the broader so what, I think this is a great way to tie that in as well too. So as you're thinking about topics, as you're thinking about your personal statement, think about how that story exists within the broader story that you're telling in your application. Okay, y'all, you're probably sick of hearing me, and I would love to give y'all an opportunity to chat with each other a little bit. We're going to take a look at a handful of essays, and I want y'all to be the judges of what's good about these essays, what's not good, what type of essay is it, all that good stuff. So let's take a look here. You can use your phone, or I'm going to drop the link in the chat here. Either way, this will take you to a Google Doc that's got a handful of essays on it. Just pulling the link, copy link, everyone. Okay, perfect. So you can click on that link, or you can use the QR code to scan and pull it up on your phone. And there's going to be 3 essays included here. Within your breakout room, I want you to read the essays one by one. So just read one essay. Everybody take a minute to read the essay by yourself. And then with that essay, I want you to talk about, is this a narrative essay or a montage essay? So think back to those structures that we talked about tonight. What's good about this essay and what could be improved? And be specific. If you were writing this essay, how would you make it better? Think back to our discussion. Are these students following the suggested outlines? Well, wow, another typo I missed. I'm so sorry about that. And what is their so what? So at the end of this, what is that piece that we get to learn about as admissions officer? What is that kind of headline of the essay that you think makes it impactful and worth writing about in a personal statement? Does anyone, before we jump into the breakouts, does anyone have any questions about what they need to do right now? Perfect. All right, Nick's going to go ahead and throw us in. I'm going to try to bounce in and out of rooms and kind of see how the discussion's going. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, welcome back. Welcome back. We'll give folks a few more seconds. Okay, as folks are coming back in, I hope this was fun. I don't know. I know many of you did school during the COVID era of probably many Zoom breakout rooms. So I don't know how fun it was. But hopefully it was helpful. I'd love if anybody feels comfortable dropping in the chat any key thoughts or takeaways from your discussion with your peers in the breakout rooms. And they can be about any of the essays that you looked at. All right, let's see. Our group, that the first 2 were good and the second one talked about tennis, but the person never really wrote about tennis. Okay, interesting. Yeah, okay, that's great. Second essay is a montage, and I think the writer elaborated on the issue at hand perfectly and also went well in depth about the action she took to contribute to the cause. Nice, that's great. Yeah, the first one was interesting, though, a bit of a drag. So, okay, yeah. Fair enough. Our group talked about how we liked the first essay, but we thought the writer had a lackluster ending with their so what. Nice. Good job, Steve. And as we said, I would argue that's the most important thing. Why does this matter? Why should we care about this? So if that's missing, that's not great. Okay, awesome. Some great insights here. I hope that was helpful to kind of put that to practice a little bit more. So we're getting towards the end of our time. I'm going to open it up to more questions, but I just want to do one more shameless plug to say I'd love to work with you. I do this for a living. I help students just like you be successful in this process. And if you and your folks are interested in more help and support, just know we would love to walk alongside you. You can scan that QR code to schedule a free intro call. You can look me up on the Leland profile. Would love to help y'all out. This is the work I'm passionate about, so I'd love to work with you. This is how we'll help you. So the nice thing about working with me is you get me and this beautiful team I have at the firm that I have founded, which just means you get a lot of eyes on essay support, things like that. So we would typically start you with a writing workshop where you would work either with myself or my wife, who also is an expert in this space, to really come up with what's that application narrative, how are we going to lean into these writing supplements, all that good stuff. We do essay brainstorming for every essay, so you know exactly what topic you should be writing about. We also help with outlining those essays, and then really high-level editing. So I mentioned my wife. She has an English degree from Northwestern, also a master's in higher ed admin. She works in copywriting, helped write content for Craft, Southwest, Chance the Rapper's nonprofit organization, Culture Works. So a lot of experience there, and then a lot of experience on the essay side. So we'd love to help you there, proofing, making sure all of that is ready to go. So let me know if you'd like more support there. We'd love to have a call with you. But for now, let's answer what questions y'all have left. So we got a few minutes here. What questions were y'all still hoping to have answered? And again, if I missed a question earlier, feel free to repost it in the chat and I will answer it now. What questions do y'all still have about the writing process or other aspects of the application process? Yeah, so I'm getting some questions on, I'd love some feedback on my essay. Yes, would be happy to help you with that. First start would be scheduling a call with me. So let's have that intro call. Let's talk. Happy to help you there. You're so welcome, Megan. Thanks for being here. Okay, can you give some tips about how to write for majors like econ and business that doesn't connect with personal life? So yeah, and again, your personal statement doesn't have to tie to your academic interests. I think I would still go back to that kind of first essay of like, what are these pieces that you're trying to show about yourself from a values perspective, identity perspective? But then, yeah, if we want to lean into econ or business as an app narrative, if I were working with you, one thing I'd want to know is like, what were some of the experiences that you had? So, are you someone who started a business when they were in high school, right? And you have an LLC already. Maybe you lean into elaborating on that. I think econ business is also a great way to connect. Like there are pathways to connect to like a broader social interest, or like, maybe you've got a passion for a certain cause and you founded a nonprofit to support that, right? Like that can still show an entrepreneurial spirit that aligns with, I think, a business major really well. Maybe you're leaning into like global economics, right? And how certain countries are impacting more than, there's a lot of different directions you can go with this. But I think I would probably look for either what are the values, like what are you using business and econ to show about you beyond just that you're interested in studying them? And is there a broader hook or connection to business and econ that can show another side of you, like a more service-oriented side? I think is how I would potentially approach that. Okay, let's see. I have two hooks in mind, one very personal and one targeted to the major I'm applying for. How should I choose between the two? That's tough, right? I think it depends. I would want to see how it fits into your overall application, right? And I think that's where, working with a coach can help because, I don't like to say things in a vacuum. I like to see how it all fits together, right? Because this whole thing is that package that we're putting together to tell a story about you. So I think it depends. I think you can do a more personal story, or I think you can lean in more to your academic interest. It just depends on kind of what the rest of the application looks like and what our goals are with the application. For a montage essay, how should I include examples that flow coherently as one essay? Yeah, that's a good question. So I think having a really good outline can really help you with this, right? So kind of thinking through that theme that you're trying to represent, so with the music, having a good outline where you kind of show, okay, in this paragraph, I want to talk about this. And in this paragraph, I want to talk about this to connect to this. And think about the connection points between the two. I think the real trick to this is having good transition sentences between paragraphs, right? And finding that kind of through line between the stories. I also think, when in doubt, tell a sequential story, like, tell it chronologically. So start earlier in life, go to later in life. I think that's an easy way to kind of tie these different experiences together too. You think that it's good if I only focus on one topic in my essay, for example, my sports only? So again, it depends. So, that's kind of more of a narrative essay. So if you wanted to focus on, I mean, I guess you could do a montage essay about sports. I would say, I kind of go back to my sports thing is if you're going to write about your sport, try to think about something unique within your sport, right? It's just like talking about your athletic endeavors is kind of a played out narrative, right? A lot of people talk about their sport. And so I would say if you're going to talk about your sport, really think about some unique hook within your sport, right? Maybe you were a captain, and as part of being a captain of the cross country team, you helped organize community service events in your community. I have a student actually, you know what? I have a better example of this. I have a student I'm working with right now, and he's a cross country captain, and we're writing his essay about a rideshare program that he started because he was leaving practice and he realized that the school had a gap in their transportation service where after practice on Fridays, these kids didn't have a ride home. And so he realized that and he started giving these kids a ride home after practice. And this led to him actually like doing some community organizing, getting the school to change their policy and to pay for a bus on Fridays to bus kids home. Like that's a cool, unique story within the sport. It's more unique. It shows more about that student than I had a sports injury that I had to overcome. So I think that's kind of how you want to find that, like, what's that thing within that topic that's going to be unique to you. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, then we're going to wrap this thing up. Let's see here. If let's say in our essay or essays, we want to mention a passion project we did, will we mention it as the main part or just like an example so we don't really brag about it? Or should we just mention it in our resume only? A lot of these is tough, but I don't know if there's a one right answer to this, right? I think it depends on what is. So like, if your passion project, yeah, I think you could. I think you could write an essay around that, but you don't want to just be like reiterating what you already said in your activities list. You want to really be able to go a little bit deeper. Let's say your passion project was, you founded a nonprofit for kids with childhood cancer, right? And, maybe you use that experience or a specific experience there as a vehicle to talk about your interest in, I'm just making this up as I go. It's like pre-med or, what have you. And so like, that's the vehicle, I think it's fine to use that. But yeah, it depends. And you don't want your essay to just be like you listing accomplishments or like regurgitating extracurriculars that we have elsewhere. You want to really be able to dig in deep and show some aspects of that tell more about you than that activity, right? What are we learning about you through your involvement at that children's hospital? What are the values that are coming out through that? I think that's more important. Yeah, is it okay to talk about topics like religion if it helped me grow and foster a new mindset? Yeah, and I see Nick, you said absolutely yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially if it's a salient part of your identity, for sure, for sure. Even like, the application, it's like, there's even like political topics, right? Like, I mean, maybe you're a part of, I have a student who does a lot of political activism for the Democratic Party in her community, right? Like, it's okay to lean into some of those things that maybe are a little bit spicier as a topic. So yeah, I would say, in the right context, that's totally fine. Okay, y'all, I think we've answered most of the general questions. I want to wrap up by just saying, thank y'all again. Here's my info again. If you want to grab my profile, you can do it there. I know Nick dropped the link in the chat too. I like to end all of my presentations, all of my interactions like this, and I've done this since I worked in highly selective admissions offices, and I like to end them by saying a couple things. It is not lost on me that this is not the most fun process. Applying to college is stressful. There's a lot of pressure on you. And if you're a student who's really aiming for, that top 1% or your most selective programs, it is a lot of hard work to be competitive for those schools, right? And then you get to that point, and you put all this info out there, and some schmuck like me gets to say whether you're good enough to attend the institution. And what I want you to know is that if you are someone that took the time to sign up for an essay writing boot camp, you are exactly the type of student that's going to be successful in this, because you're the type of student that's looking for ways to better yourself and to learn more about this process. There are over 4,000 colleges and universities out there, and oftentimes we just focus on this small little handful of them. And I promise you that there is going to be an amazing school out there for you that you're going to thrive in, because there's so many places out there that would be so excited to have you on their campus. So I hope you will hold that to be true, that you are enough regardless of what these decisions say. This is not a representation of your self-worth. And for your most selective schools, usually you get told no for reasons that have nothing to do with you as a candidate, because they just get so many qualified applicants that they get to say no to a lot of people. So hang in there. You're all going to land somewhere great. And if I can help you in this process, just know that I'm happy to do that. And I know a lot of coaches at Leland are happy to do that too. So I'm going to turn it back over to the Leland team. We'll see if they have any last notes for y'all. But thank you again so much for being here. And I wish you all the best in this process.
Lovely. Thank you, Skylar, for a wonderful and super informative session. And thank you all once again for sticking around. I know for a lot of you, the personal essay is probably the most nail-biting portion of your application. At least that was the case for me. So thankfully, Skylar has done a fantastic job guiding us through thinking about the process. Once again, I encourage you to check out his profile on Leland. He's one of our very best. Nick has just put the link to his profile once again in the chat, which you can use to book a free intro call if you want to, for a more personal look into your application journey. Additionally, I'll be sending over post-session assignments shortly, so keep an eye out on your inbox. Again, completing these tasks will help you stay on track and boost your chances towards receiving our coaching scholarship. Thank you again for being here and engaging, and we'll see you next session, next Thursday, where we'll be covering college-specific essays. See you all then, and enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.